Is Dan Mikic the front runner to win the Defender of the Year award? Let's talk about it and get into the episode now. To kick off this week's episode of High Press, we are going to start with the power rankings, where there is a new leader and is the Halifax Wanderers.
Yep, and a deserved lead for these Wanderers atop the power rankings after a big win over Valor at home, dominant performance as well. They've just been in excellent form as of late, and they now sit in a four-way tie for second place, of course. But I'm sure if you told Wanderers fans months ago they'd even be in second place, they'd be in the race, they'd be within touching distance of the title, they would have been ecstatic. And it's been that kind of season for Halifax. Otherwise, big win on the weekend for York, who climbs up to fifth after a bit of rough form as of late. So that's huge for them. Of course, on the other side, Ottawa harshly falls to second. They didn't really do anything to deserve that, but sometimes when a team like Halifax rises, one must fall, and that was unfortunately Ottawa. Otherwise, Pacific's down to sixth as their form tumbles a bit.
Moving along now to our match week in 60-second section, we are going to start at the top of the power rankings with the Halifax Wanderers and Dan Mikic. I mean, he has to be a front runner for the Defender of the Year award. He scored once again, now in back-to-back weeks. He picked up a clean sheet. He is thriving at the moment. Alex, nothing can stop him.
No, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting because no doubt front runner for Defender of the Year. I mean, deservedly so. It's been an absolute rock at the back for Halifax. He's played every minute. And I think that cannot be understated because, this is his first full professional season. It's hard to play every minute, to go from college up to the pro ranks as he has. Also, this is a Halifax team that is not shy in rotating. They have some good options at the back, yet Mikic has been undroppable. And because of that, Defender of the Year feels like it might not be strong enough for him. I mean, certainly he's in the race. It's going to come down between him and another Iron Man, funnily enough, Dan Klomp. But why it be too soon to start putting Mikic in the MVP race? Based on Halifax's form and how important he's been, wouldn't put it past it.
Speaking of Halifax's form right now, they're absolutely thriving at the moment. Valor can be a very difficult team to break down. They showed that in the first half, but in the second, things opened up and Halifax took over. It also helps when you have some special players in the squad. Morelli coming off the bench, scoring a very well-taken goal and getting a picture-perfect assist. And in my eyes, one of the best midfielders in the league right now, Cavalry. These two players are so important to this team, aren't they, Alex?
They're playing a huge role, and you just see they kind of been the heartbeat of this team, and you can throw Mikic into that conversation as well at the back, and it just helps because they're giving you value in each line of the field. You're getting value in the attack from the likes of Morelli, also of course Aiden Daniels, et cetera, et cetera. You look at Caligari, he's the heartbeat of the team on both sides of the ball, and then you add Mikic defensively among a few other options. They've kind of been leaders, and that's been key in a system like Patrice Geisar's, but it's very high tempo, very, lots of flowing, and we've seen that. So, it's been interesting because for Halifax, the individuals are shining, but also the team's shining. But as someone like Geisar is saying, the only way individuals are going to shine is when the team's shining, and boy, is it shining right now for Halifax.
Number 2 in the power rankings is Atletico Ottawa, who pick up a cagey draw against Forge FC. Ottawa defended very well in this game and get a valuable point. They typically struggle to do so against Forge, so this is very important for them.
Yeah, it was a big result in the sense that typically you draw at home, maybe you'd be a bit frustrated, maybe you see it as a missed opportunity. But look, Forge has had their number. I think it was 14 games heading into this between them all time. Forge had won 11. It has been one-way traffic for Forge. Ottawa had only even drawn 2. Then one win was the other result. So the fact that they got a draw feels like a win given their past history against Forge, especially in Ottawa. Forge has typically done very well in Ottawa. So overall, it's good growth from Ottawa. It's good progress. You take the point. I think after the game, Carlos Gonzalez was very happy as he should be. And it's one of those where you take that and move on. And I'm sure they will based on their form. Just one loss in their last 10 games, which is absurd.
Cavalry FC remained third place in the power rankings after picking up a controversial 1-0 win against Pacific FC. But right now, Alex, they go 4 points top of the table. And honestly, a big part of that was a huge save from Marco Carducci, who's finding some good form.
Yeah, overall, it was one where perhaps fortune smiled Cavalry a bit in the face with the penalty in the day, but they deserved what they got in the end in terms of a victory. They hit a post. They were dangerous. They could have, had all sorts of goals. And that's the sort of performance you want. Sometimes, like they say, you got to be good to be lucky. And, part of that is performances from at the back. And Marco Carducci's been one that's kind of been slept on. I mean, we hear a lot about Dan Klopp, you hear about Eric Kobza, etc. But Carducci's quietly found some good form as of late, and it's helping his team rise up the table. And look, this Cavalry team's just playing good football overall. I think it was interesting here, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. say his team was playing like a new Cavalry with the old values, because earlier in the year, it kind of felt like they'd lost old values. We were wondering, a lot of new players, a lot of returnees had moved on, retired, etc. But I think Cavalry's kind of found their feet again, and they're looking like Cavalry, but doing so in a bit more of a front foot, newer look thing. And that's the reason why they sit atop the table.
Fourth place in the power rankings is Forge FC, who pick up a 0-0 draw against Atletico Ottawa. It's their third straight draw, and they are winless in 4. However, it was a great defensive performance, which was very needed, wasn't it, Alex?
Well, heading into this game, they'd conceded 7 goals in their last 3 games. So, look, you won't complain in finding your feet a bit defensively on the road against an Ottawa team that's been doing well at home this season. And look, it's something that's kind of the balance, right? Glass half full, glass half empty. Forge, great defense performance, kept a clean sheet, got a point on the road. Look, they also need wins. Like you mentioned, winless in 4, and there's some huge stretch of games coming up. York's hot on their tail. They can easily drop to 5th, 6th, if depending on how things go. So huge stretch ahead for Forge, but you take the point, you move on, and maybe you use it as a bit of a building block.
Moving on up to 5th place in the power rankings is York United, who maybe were a little bit fortunate to walk away with these 3 points. There was a controversial no red card for Roger Thompson and a pretty soft penalty that Mo Babuli ended up putting in the back of the net. That was an important 3 points for them, but there's a big stretch coming up for York. They have 4 straight at home. They need 150 U21 minutes a game. Can they do it?
That's going to be this is their season right here. I think especially that 4-game homestand, because look, they haven't been great at home this year. So that's something where they need to get wins on the board there. And they also have to get some U21 minutes, and it's a lot easier to do it at home typically than throwing out, a bunch of kids on the road to, a Pacific, a Cavalry, a Halifax. So funnily enough, they play Halifax away this weekend. So we'll see how many U21 minutes they get in that game. But absolutely, the U21 minutes is key. Look, they got to win against Vancouver, perhaps a bit fortunate, but you got to beat the teams below you, especially. Now find a way to balance getting those U21 minutes with getting wins. They have some options. I think Adisa Di Rosario looks very good in goal, and he should get the brunt of the minutes going forward. But the question is, they need a second player alongside him, or maybe even a third to help their cause. And who's that going to be? Trivian Esprit's shown flashes. Carson Bushman-Dortmund's finding his feet. Will it be those two? Will it be Noah Batnag? Very curious to see.
Pacific FC dropped down to 6th place in the power rankings after losing against the Cavs. They just didn't do enough to win. They're slumping right now. Alex, what do they need to do to break out of it?
Understandably, if you're a Pacific fan, you won't be the most pleased in the world about this game. Controversial penalty decision, one that felt very soft. But also it's one of those where if it didn't happen, I don't know if Pacific gets much more than a draw out of this game. They just really didn't do enough. And that's something where, look, in terms of breaking out of the slump, they need to find a way to just get back to where they were earlier in the season. It feels especially defensively, but even more so in the attack, just the flow, the finishing, the ruthlessness, the confidence. It feels like all of those things have left, and that'll be what I'm watching for. They have a huge stretch of games coming up. Get some goals, do so with confidence, and then I think they'll be all right.
In 7th place in the power rankings, we have Vancouver FC, who had a tough loss, but I want to know, Alex, what are they going to do with Sean Hundal? He was one of the bright spots for them at the beginning of the season, but he has not scored since July the 2nd.
That was the big worry when an Alejandro Diaz came in. Of course, there was a lot to be excited about. That's a guy who can put the ball in the back of the net, but you kind of wondered, how would him and Sean Hundal mesh? And turns out, it hasn't been great, and I think part of that's hard to say it's both of them. I think Diaz has been asked to lead the line, and Hundal has been asked to play on the wing. Diaz can lead the line. That's not to say he can't, but also it's been a bit asked. You can tell his match sharpness, his match fitness isn't up there, so he's still adapting to that role. And then Hundal, he's better leading the line than on the wing. And I think personally, I would have loved to see Hundal lead the line, make those runs, and have Diaz play underneath. I think that would have got more out of them. And it feels like neither of them are thriving right now. And the Hundal one's frustrating because that was a player in form, that was a confident score, and you hate to see someone kind of lose his confidence and form like that. So hopefully he can find it before the end of the year, because he was fun to watch.
Finally, in last place in our power rankings is Valor FC, who kind of feel like their playoff hopes are dead. Yesley has regressed a bit, which is bad for them. He was so important. You can't really blame him that much, though, because he's faced a lot of shots this year. But if Valor want any chance of somehow qualifying for the playoffs, they need him to be perfect.
And that's just been the story of Valor's season. It feels like they've needed just things to go right to have a chance. It feels like they've needed, a forward to step up, to score some goals, to have those moments of magic, and they just aren't getting them. And I think for Yesli, you kind of feel for him because he was so great early in the season. That gave Valor a chance, but it shows that he has had to be perfect because he hasn't even statistically been, regressed that much, but it's something where they needed perfection, and anything less than perfection has felt like a big slump. And that's just kind of been the, a microcosm of Valor, in the sense that they've needed a bit more from individuals than they've been able to ask. And that's why it looks like they might miss the playoffs.
Moving along now to our third section, the look ahead. We are going to take a look at the Tony Bet match of the week between Pacific FC and Valor FC. And the biggest storyline for me is the fact that this is a must win for Pacific at home, especially given the fact that they've dropped a lot of games at home, a lot of points. If they want any chance to be able to go into that second place, potentially play the Cavs, and hopefully have the opportunity to host a home game, they need to win this match.
Yeah, big set for coming up for Pacific. They have a back-to-back home games. Valor, Halifax, got to get wins off that, because then they head to Ontario for 3 games. Then they play Vancouver at home in a Salish Sea derby, and they finish away to Cavalry, where they've struggled historically away to Cavalry. Of course, they lose again this weekend, continuing those struggles. So this is one where you got to get points on the board looking ahead to, it's not going to be an easy end to the year for Pacific. I think they'll relish that. James Merriman has said his team responds well when their backs are against the wall. Well, I think their backs are pretty firmly up against the wall right now.
Now, the stat for me to take a look at is the fact that Pacific's defensive record has slipped a bit. They've only kept 3 clean sheets in the past 11 matches, and 2 of those were against Valor. So could they be primed for a 3rd straight clean sheet against this Valor side?
I think they absolutely are primed. Valor's offense has been quiet. They get shut out this weekend on the road, to Halifax. So if you're Pacific, this is a good chance to maybe build a bit of defensive confidence again. You've had Valor's number, so why not, keep that going, get a clean sheet. I think that would be huge for Pacific's confidence, because for all the fun they've had scoring goals this year, I think Pacific's best performances, it was in that stretch when they're winning 1-0. Like, remember those back-to-back 1-0 wins? That's when Pacific's looked at their best, when they're doing their thing on both sides of the ball. So for Valor, it starts with defending, and then do well on that side. I think they'll be all right.
Now, Alex, for a tactic to keep an eye on for this match, for me, I'm looking at Sean Young. He had such an incredible start to this season. He was so important for that Pacific midfield. He's kind of slowed down a bit. So what do Pacific need to do to get the best out of Sean Young?
It's a great question. I think it's going to be intriguing to see, because it feels like earlier in the year he was getting a lot more involved in the final third. I think that was a big, noticeable difference. Not only was he getting the goals and assists, but they were coming because he was constantly in the final third, making the final pass, the final shot. And we haven't seen enough of that, I don't think, as of late. And I don't think Pacific will, they'll want to see more from him in that regard. So I'd say push him higher up the field if you can. Cedric Toussaint at that number 6, have him hold it down and maybe push Young and Manny Aparicio as well a bit forward. Although Aparicio does love to drop back in possession. Either way, I think it will come down to tactically getting Young into that final third more. It just feels like whenever he's been on the ball there this season, he's done well, but he hasn't been getting there as much, and I think his confidence is suffering a bit as a result. I think that miss against Vancouver a few weeks ago, early in the season, he puts that away. So just get him up the field and get that confidence back.
Now, my burning question for you is a good one. Valor have scored 1 goal in their past 7 road matches. So the question is, will they score this weekend?
And funnily enough, that goal came off a set piece as well. So it's been since May they've scored in open play on the road. If I'm Valor, I'd say no, based on Pacific's defensive record against them. But look, on the flip side of it, this is a huge chance for Valor. First of all, if you want to make the playoffs, you got to win. You need win. At this point, I don't think you can afford many losses or draws, if any at all. So, and at the very least, even if you don't make the playoffs, make the playoff race fun. Beat some teams in front of you. Make it chaotic. And that's to win, you need goals. So for Valor, go out, maybe throw caution to the wind a bit and chase after that goal, because, yeah, it's not been pretty in that regard.
That is all the time we have for in this week's episode of High Press. I really hope you all enjoyed it. And if you want the opportunity to win the latest edition of Derby Magazine, find OneSoccer in social media, reach out to us, and let us know if you think that Valor will score against Pacific this weekend. We will choose a winner at random, so best of luck, and be sure to tune in for next week's update.